So, if I'm reading the vibe being sent out by tech companies correctly, anything resulting from the development of AI that threatens some human endeavor is just the cost of doing business, another part of progress. But any human endeavor that threatens the development of AI is completely unacceptable. Have I got that right? According to the public defenders of AI, it seems like I do kind of have that right. This is from a recent article published in The Times of London. Headline: Nick Clegg, artists' demands over copyright are unworkable. This article written by Lucy Bannerman. Here's a little bit of what the article says. Quote, making technology companies ask artists permission before they scrape copyrighted content will basically kill the AI industry in this country overnight, Sir Nick Clegg has said, and by this country, of course, he means the United Kingdom. The former deputy prime minister, who spent almost 7 years working for the social media giant Meta, sided with technology companies when asked on Thursday about the clash over AI copyright laws. What a shock. The former executive of a company that has staked much of its future on developing AI technology has sided with the developers of AI technology and against artists. Here's a little bit more of what Nick Clegg had to say from further down in the article. Referring to the question of whether artists should be able to withhold their content from the AI models that are being trained, he said, on the one hand, yeah, I think it seems to me as a matter of natural justice to say to people that they should be able to opt out of having their creativity, their products, what they've worked on, indefinitely modeled. That seems to me to be not unreasonable to opt out. However, he added, I think the creative community wants to go a step further. Quite a lot of voices say you can only train on my content if you first ask. And I have to say that strikes me as somewhat implausible, because these systems train on vast amounts of data. I just don't know how you go around asking everyone first. I just don't see how that would work. And by the way, if you did it in Britain and no one else did it, you would basically kill the AI industry in this country overnight. So I think people should have clear, easy to use ways of saying, no, I don't, I want out of this. But I think expecting the industry, technologically or otherwise, to preemptively ask before they even start training, I just don't see. I'm afraid that just collides with the physics of the technology itself. Well, at least he thinks people should be allowed to opt out. Look, I am not as anti-AI in principle as a lot of people. If the environmental concerns and the ethical concerns can be dealt with and resolved, and those are two really, really big ifs. But if those two areas can be dealt with and resolved, I think AI, generative AI, like ChatGPT and similar platforms, image generators, that sort of thing, I think they can be fun toys, and I think they can even be incredibly useful tools in certain select areas and specific applications. But you do need to deal with those two factors. You need to find a way to run AI models in ways that will not deplete the water of the surrounding area to keep the servers cool, and will not use up so much energy, so much electricity that it's basically like mashing down the accelerator pedal on climate change. Like that, those are serious concerns that need to be addressed. And so are the concerns of people in what Nick Clegg refers to very broadly as the creative community, people whose work is being used mostly, almost entirely without their permission, often even without their knowledge, to train these large language models. You can't just brush that off. It's not fair. It's not right to just say, well, we have to do it. We have no choice. What do you expect us to do? Go ask everybody's permission? Yeah? I'll give you two thought experiments. Let's say instead of intellectual theft, instead of stealing someone's work, stealing someone's art, we were talking about a more practical material form of theft. Let's say Nick Clegg was representing the interests of an industry that wasn't stealing people's artwork or people's writing or whatever, but was breaking into people's houses and robbing them blind and stealing all of their material possessions. And let's say that they've been doing this for several years on a massive scale, just going into communities and just breaking into everybody's houses and robbing them blind. And now, finally, after years of this going on, people are finally starting to say, we don't want you to steal from us anymore. And we think that if you want us to contribute to your business, you should have to ask us if you can take our stuff and use it for your business. We should have to work out some kind of an agreement before you break into our house and steal our stuff. And Nick Clegg's compromise position is, well, what if you could opt out? What if you could say, don't break into my house? And then they won't break into your house. The default is, if we come to your town, we're breaking into your house and stealing all your stuff. But if you get in contact with us ahead of time and you say, hey, don't break into my house. Okay, we'll respect that. Of course we'll respect that. We respect natural justice, natural law. We respect people's property and privacy. Of course, if you specifically ask us not to break into your house and steal all your stuff, we will absolutely not do that. But if you don't opt out, of course we're going to break into your house. Like, that's the scale of this operation is too large. We can't just stop and knock. You really expect us to knock on everyone's door and ask people one at a time before we rob their house? Our business would never survive that way. Now, doesn't that sound ridiculous? Doesn't that sound absurd that someone in that position would even say that in public? You're representing a business that was built on theft, that was built on profiting from other people's stuff that you took from them without their permission? And now you're trying to babyface yourself, if I may employ some professional wrestling jargon. You're trying to make yourself the good guy and trying to get sympathy for yourself and for your company that was built on stealing from people by saying, well, if we had to ask people before we stole from them, we'd never be able to get anything done. We'd never make a profit on that. As if the general public should be more concerned about your business being a success than the rights of the people that you're stealing from? It's absurd. And it's insulting that you would even make that argument. But somehow, because we're talking about creative works, because we're talking about intellectual property, somehow it's different. Somehow it's okay. It's okay to steal from an artist for your own profit. It's okay to take someone's work and use it to train an AI model that you and your company will profit from, but the artist won't profit from. That's okay, because your ability to make this AI company a success is apparently so important that you should just be allowed to steal from the artist. But if you make it about stealing somebody's physical property, as opposed to stealing their intellectual property, I feel like it resolves immediately into a complete absurdity and an offensive, outrageous thing to demand. If your company can't survive without stealing from people, then your company should go out of business. Sorry about your luck. Sorry you couldn't figure out a way to make it work without stealing from people. If you can figure out a way to make it work without stealing from people, a lot of us would be very interested and might even be willing to help you out. But if your argument is, I have to be allowed to steal from people, or else what? Or else what? We won't get the cure for cancer? You're not working to cure cancer. We won't get the solution to climate change? You're definitely not working on that. What's the upside? There are these vague promises / threats of, oh, well, if the AI industry doesn't take off, it'll be bad for the economy, it'll be bad for the country. But there's nothing specific. There's no reason why, for the sake of the public good, why you have to steal from artists. It's all about, well, we have this thing that we think is going to make us a lot of money. And in order for it to make us a lot of money, we need to steal the work of other people. But if we're allowed to do that, then our company will make a lot of money. And like what, I'm supposed to give a shit? Anybody who's not who doesn't stand to profit from that company is supposed to give a shit and be like, oh, I understand. You want to make a lot of money for yourself. So it's okay that you steal from people. It's absurd. The other thought experiment is this. Pretend we're talking about the intellectual property of a major corporation. Pretend we're talking about the intellectual property of one of these AI companies. Let's say somebody else has an idea, $1 billion idea for a new product, for a new kind of computer software, for a new whatever it is. And in order to make it work, they need to infringe on the patents held by one of these AI companies. Would that wash? Would they stand still for that for a second? If some other company started up and said, we have this great idea for a product, and in order to make it work, we're going to have to infringe on patents held by the Meta Corporation. Would Nick Clegg say, oh, that's completely fair? You know, the potential upside of this new business is just through the roof. It's just, the potential is limitless. So, of course, they should, we can't expect them to ask permission to use the intellectual property of Meta. That wouldn't be fair. Let them do their thing. Let them cook. That would never happen. That would never happen. They might work out a deal, right? Meta might say, look, we believe in this thing you're trying to do. If you want to use our patents, if you want to use our intellectual property, let's work out a deal where we get compensated or we get a piece of it or whatever. That's how that would work. If somebody just started using things they weren't allowed to use that didn't belong to them to make a profit for them and not for the people it belonged to, that would end up in court 5 minutes after they found out about it, wouldn't it? You're saying that you should be allowed to steal in order to make your company profitable. And the only reason you're saying it and the only reason you think you're getting away with it is because of what you're stealing and who you're stealing it from. If you were stealing it from another company that had the resources and the clout to fight you on it, you wouldn't even try. You certainly wouldn't be doing it in public. You certainly wouldn't be trying to justify it to the world with some kind of bizarre moral argument or some kind of practical argument. Well, the technology is too big. It goes against the nature of the technology. The technology that presumably somebody needs to turn on. It's not as though there's some kind of natural argument to be made here where the AI technology, it just exists and it does what it does. It's like a hurricane. There's nothing we can do about it. We just have to do our best to let it do its thing and work through what it needs to do. And the rest of us just have to accept it and adapt to it. It's technology that people invented, that people are using, that people are employing. People with money are choosing to ignore the rights of people with, relatively speaking, less money, in many cases no money, to make them more money. That's what this is. And they're saying we shouldn't have to compensate these people. We shouldn't have to get permission from these people. Grudgingly, if you insist, we will let you opt out. We will let you opt out of us stealing from you, as though they're the ones with the authority. They're the ones being magnanimous. Oh, okay, if you specifically tell us not to steal from you, then I guess we won't do it. That's what kind of great guys we are. Aren't we great guys? We'll agree not to steal from you if you ask us not to. There's an old saying that says, good artists copy and great artists steal. If AI companies are allowed to continue developing like they have been, we might need to revise that old saying so that it goes a little more something like, good artists copy, great artists and AI companies steal. And if it gets to that point, that would be a real shame, because I would hate for people to think that artists and AI companies have anything in common.